A great nationalian morning, everyone. Media has great role in the human society, from the horses or those who announce the information that we are having right now through the modern world of delivering information through the internet. The pace of change is accelerating, and the information of communication has been changed rapidly in the past 20 years. And as such, across the globe, mobile devices means to connect everywhere at any time, and this device at everyone's hand. The study of the New York Times Consumer Insight Group revealed that most motivations or those who have internet said that there's always a desire to share valuable entertaining content to others to grow and nourish themselves and to get the word of causes they like and support. The war in Ukraine has brought a lot of news and information, from painting it as the Putin's war, a genocide, the restoration of the glory days of the Soviet Union, and so forth. However, we haven't really heard the other side of the story. And as humanities and social sciences student, it's our role and duty to be a good practitioners of media information so that we can heal the ignorance of the society. As students, how we can really be responsible and competent producers of media and information. We present to you Humanista, the role of media in the 21st century. And we, the students of the National School of National University, is presenting it to you. This is a video from The Guardian, which shows that the Russian declaration of war in the Ukraine. So for the first question, what do you think happened in the war in Ukraine, Miss Arnaiz? Miss
After watching the video presented, I find out that what really happened in Ukraine-Russian war. So the invasion began on the morning of 24 February when Putin announced a special military operation to demilitarize Ukraine.
Thank you, Miss Arnaiz. Last man, Mr. Timbre, what do you think happened in that war? Mr. Timbre?
I think the both country was just trying to protect their country. But I think for me, Vladimir Putin declared the war between Russia and Ukraine because he said that he was just trying to protect their country, especially the Russian citizen. But the fact that he was trying to invade the Ukraine and the Ukraine country claims to have discovered proof of war crimes perpetrated while under Russian rule in Bucha and other towns surrounding Kiev. 4 million people have fled Ukraine as a result of Russian strikes on population centers. And I think that this is one of the most controversial and worst day for them, especially those old people who affected a lot during this war between Russia and Ukraine.
And do you think that Russia is the aggressor in this conflict?
For me, probably yes. And the fact that when every time they try to attack or to invade other countries just to feed themselves and to protect their country, which is the Russia.
Thank you, Mr. Aurigue. Mr. Timbre. Mr.
Thank you.
Aurigue, do you think Russia is the aggressor in this conflict?
In terms of detonation, I believe they are.
Thank you, Ms. Aurigue. So let's proceed with the other side of the story, or what other political scientists have been thinking. So we will present a video from Professor Mersheimer. He is a professor of political science on University of Chicago, and he said that in the Ukraine theory, what is happening right now is because of what have been United States and Europe have been doing to Russia of expanding eastward by inviting Ukraine to the NATO membership. However, as what the United States is doing, it is the right to self-determination to join such intercontinental organization. So let's hear it for Mr. Mersheimer and what really is the Ukraine theory for him.
How do you see the debate people are having regarding your theory that the West has been cornering Russia, which led to the latter's invasion or war against Ukraine?
Well, I think that in the West, especially in Europe and the United States, the mainstream media rejects my argument almost completely. And instead of blaming NATO and the West for precipitating this crisis, they prefer, for obvious reasons, to blame Vladimir Putin. I would note to you, by the way, if you look at the Western Hemisphere, the United States has a Monroe Doctrine. The United States does not believe that countries in the Western Hemisphere have a right to have their own foreign policy. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, when I was young, we did not believe that Cuba had the right to invite the Soviets to put missiles in Cuba. The same basic principle that the United States applies in the Western Hemisphere is the one that the Russians are applying vis-a-vis Ukraine. The Russians view Ukraine becoming a part of NATO as an existential threat. This is why, going back to April 2008, Putin drew a line in the sand. He said, this is not going to happen. This is a threat to our survival. And everything that has happened since then fits that basic paradigm.
So this is the video of Mr. Mersheimer, a professor of University of Chicago, presenting the theory of Ukraine, which state that whatever is happening right now is due to also the aggression of United States and the Europeans of inviting another members to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And he said that in some point, the Russian will take action, and that is why the Ukraine war is happening. So, Ms. Aurigue, do you think that Professor Mersheimer points are valid?
Yes, I do think it is valid because Russia truly becomes aggressive only when they feel like they are being cornered by these specific countries. And that made me think that them starting a war between Ukraine is just a self-defense for their jurisdiction.
Thank you, Ms. Aurigue. Mr. Encela, do you think Professor Mersheimer points are valid?
Her point is valid, but let's check the background. The reporter is from India, no ally of Russia, together with China and North Korea. We need to check the facts and not based on 7 minutes report.
Thank you, Mr. Encela. And now let's proceed with another question. If Ukraine has the right to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, does the United States should still follow the Monroe Doctrine? Ms. Arnaiz,
In my standpoint, if Ukraine has the right to, can you repeat the question?
if Ukraine has the right to join the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, does the United States should still following the Monroe Doctrine or the doctrine that there should be no foreign policy on the Latin America or should be the same with the United States?
In my standpoint, if Ukraine has the right to join NATO, US is not already following the Monroe Doctrine, since it states nga there that US cannot interfere with European affairs. To put it simply, Ukraine is the largest country in Europe after Russia. So Russia wants the West to rule out NATO membership for Ukraine and pledge not to deploy forces in Eastern Europe.
Thank you, Ms. Arnaiz. So, what have the effects have you felt with the war in Ukraine, Ms.
Um,
Arnaiz?
s- so there are some people na hindi talaga naniniwala that the war in Ukraine has effects sa country natin since yung country nga natin is far from those countries. But however, the effects are really visible, lalong-lalo na nung bandang February 2022. For instance, in our household, we really experienced the effects since yung gas for cooking foods is nagtaas like before mga nasa 700 plus lang siya. But when the war happened, umabot siya ng 1,000 plus.
Thank you, Ms. Arnaiz. Ms. Aurigue, have you already felt the war in Ukraine?
Ayun, katulad din kay Arnaiz, naramdaman din namin yung oil price hike, lalo na yung sa may namin, anong tawag ito, wait lang. Negosyo namin kasi yun nga nagdi-deliver kami and dati, dinideliver namin siya ng pre. Tapos nung yung nag-occur nga yung oil price hike, wala kaming choice kundi ayun singilin sa customer yung charge ng deliver.
Thank you, Ms. Aurigue. So let's proceed with a report presented by an Indian news organization, Gravitas, on what does the stance or what is really happening on the war on Ukraine, presented by Ms. Palki Sharma.
Girls is a tough job. This is an armed conflict, remember. Access to combat zones is limited. There are no independent observers. So we don't know how much of the information is being filtered, modified, blocked, or concocted. Multiple storylines, multiple narratives and counter narratives are doing the rounds. The first one is that the Ukrainians are successfully defending their land. How then did Russian troops reach the outskirts of Kiev in just 2 days? The second narrative is that Russian troops are making slow progress. How can they gauge the pace of Russia's progress with no access to Russia's battle plans? There's also a third narrative, which is essentially a moral binary. Whatever the West says is right, and anyone who does not accept this narrative is trying to undermine Ukraine's sovereignty. Now, all of these narratives can be challenged, should be challenged. In the age of social media, unfiltered information shapes opinions. What's worse, social media is not a level playing field. It is controlled by the West. I'm talking about tech giants like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Google, and Apple. These companies, these private companies, have openly aligned themselves with the West. They're pushing the Western narrative and restricting Russia's side of the story. And this is problematic. I will tell you why. First of all, let's tell you what they've done. They've sanctioned Russia digitally. Remember, no government sanction forced tech companies to cut ties with Russia. There was no legal or regulatory obligation. These companies just decided to take a side based on the perspective of their stakeholders. Google has barred Russian state media from monetizing content on its platforms. Apple has gone one step further. It has suspended all product sales in Russia, cut Russians off Apple Play and other services. It has also blocked RT and Sputnik from its app store everywhere outside Russia. Then we have Twitter. It is labeling all posts by the Russian state media, adding a warning of sorts on pro-Russian stories.
So that's the clip of Gravitas presenting the issue of the war on Ukraine. So For the sixth question, do you believe that the media is shaping our perception in this issue, Miss Aurigue?
Yes, because they are the ones who give us information we base our perception on.
Thank you, Miss Aurigue. And let's proceed with the seventh question. Can media be unbiased when delivering information? If so, explain. Miss Arnaiz?
For me, yes, media can be unbiased naman talaga when delivering some information. Kaya lang minsan kasi may pinapanigan silang side, so dumadating talaga yung time na nagiging biased sila. So nagiging biased sila in terms of being one-sided rather than presenting facts of both sides, which is parang magiging kawawa yung side na pinapresent nila to be the aggressors. So I hope that all of the present media right now will be responsible enough to deliver some facts without being biased.
Thank you, Miss Arnaiz. For the last question that we are having today, Mr. Timbre, how we can be responsible and competent producer of information?
Well, for me, you can be a responsible and competent producer of information. Especially, first of all, you need to check if those information was a reliable sources ba? And also, you have to be more knowledgeable when you are delivering an information po. That's why, ayun, to become a responsible and competent producer of information.
Thank you, Mr. Timbre. Mr. Kinichi, how we can be a responsible and competent producer of
Yun nga,
information?
sabi ni Miss Timbre na check the facts, no bias, facts and truth straight to your viewers.
Thank you, Mr. Encela. And last, Ms. Aurigue, how we can be a competent and responsible producer of information?
I think the main ingredient of being competent producer of information is be well informed and deliver it straight to the point.
Thank you. Thank you for listening. And this is Humanista, the role of media in the 21st century. Take note that it is very important to be a responsible citizen on social media and the society. Thanks to all of those listeners and goodbye. Maraming salamat po.